You know, and so Mr. James, what we did last week with Fred, and I think we sort of kind of did, Kim, a little bit with you, is we helped find the criteria. Like for example, we went to a given area and pulled up, because you want an area that there have been, I think, a minimum of like 30 sales this last year. And then we also have the ability, when you pull up the listings, to see who the agents are and how many times do you see a repeat name. Because if I see an agent that has several homes, obviously that's their area. And so do I want to be in competition with that agent? So I'm looking for an area that has had at least 30 sales in the last year. I think when we look at our statistics, we're looking at, what, 5% sales? 5% or greater, and I think we found like 4.4. But anyway, it was kind of cool to see in Monsoon how to quickly get that information, and then how
I just joined.
Would you like to maybe get out of it?
No.
Can you hear me echo, echo, echo?
I can hear you.
Can you mute?
I think you're too close.
So I'm wondering if you can mute yours, and then it might be all right?
Let me mute it.
It's like we're doing a sci-fi thing. That's too funny. That's better, James. Mr. James.
Is that better? Why don't I just get out of it?
That might be, huh? Now, that's interesting, but it makes you wonder if it's too close a proximity.
Probably,
You
yeah.
know? Yeah. So I took out of it how to find, you know, what would be a good area to farm. And I loved having more of the specifics to draw from. Let's see, what else?
Was it at least 500 homes?
Yes, yes. And so you want your farming area to be at least 500 homes. Oh, and then Josh kind of showed how if you were to use Every Door Direct, but how that in itself has the ability to kind of create an area for you to farm also. And you know, it tells, and what I thought was interesting is like over here in Glendale where we lived, 47th, from 47th east to 43rd, there's a whole different clientele of people based on their income, which is roughly $33,000 that they make a year. But on the west side, it's $45,000.
Wow.
And so I thought how interesting that just in a matter of like 3 little blocks or, you know, whatever, that you have that big of a difference in that neighborhood, you know. But anyway, that's kind of what I took out of last week. So I don't know if you all drew anything else.
I'm still looking for a neighborhood in Tucson. It's been a little difficult.
But now it's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
So far I've been one-on-one, but I have the cold program, and I plan on using the cold program in Sun City West. And even now, one of my buyers, they want in a specific area, so I want to do a portal and set up a search just in the area that they want to be in.
Absolutely.
So I may need help on that.
Okay. I love that when we pull it up, and you know, again, that whether you want to do the circle or the square or the rectangular, we get to narrow down again that search so that we can be as specific.
And that's within them Flex? MLS?
Yeah, Flex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That I need to learn how to
Yeah.
do to set this portal.
Okay, well, that'll be fun. That'll be fun to do. And
I
so
can learn with you. So
Yeah,
I've not
yeah.
done any of that
All
either.
right.
So.
Well, hopefully
maybe
we're
we
still.
can do it together, huh?
That would be great. We can do that. We can absolutely do that. So hopefully you still find 10 good things every single day to start your day with.
I haven't been as consistent about it.
I was
remember
using,
most mornings.
all right. Well, even if it's like when you're driving,
Yeah.
I love that we get to be intentional. So that for those few moments, I'm just focusing on what do I have to be grateful for. And it's amazing what you see, but then what comes to mind. So, yeah, absolutely love that. And as much as possible, still working on our hour of power.
Now I can really do that.
Okay. And then I love that we get to set aside time for me to work on my business. So I'm still in the process of like setting up my drip campaign, you know, and setting up my emails. And so I'm excited to have that into place. But it's like little by little, stuff is done, you know.
Can you tell who else joined us through the computer?
Hold on here. Me.
You?
Yeah, right now just me. And so waiting for other people. So we will see. Okay, I know this has been a busy week for people. But right now it looks like just us. Okay?
This is all part of planning your business and
That's
winning.
true. All right, are we ready then for week 7?
Yes.
All right, let's see what he has to say. Any questions for me though? No? All right. I want to find ways to make it better, okay?
So welcome back to Breakthrough by Design. We're in week 7, and there's a pretty good chance that you might be experiencing a little bit of overwhelm. How are you guys doing? I mean, your project board has got to be filling up. I know you're busy talking to lots of people, scheduling lots of appointments, and this is what I know. You know, when you're texting and you're doing coffee meetings and you're doing all the marketing efforts, there's a pretty good chance you're generating lots of interested buyers and sellers. I have to share with you, I've watched thousands of agents begin to get a little overwhelmed when they've got just simply too many balls in the air. Do you all know what I'm talking about? Well, that's why today's training is so important. We're going to talk to you about marketing, as we all know, is the lead generation side of your business. And yet, all the money is made in lead follow-up, which is where appointments come from. So in your notes, please write down the following. The purpose of marketing and lead generation is to create leads and opportunities. The purpose of marketing and lead generation is to create leads and opportunities, while lead follow-up creates appointments. Lead follow-up creates appointments, and that's where all the money is made. That's where all the money is made, my friends. Now, I know as you're generating all this business, you might be saying to yourself, Tom, how do I handle all? There's just so much going on. Ready? Stop. Is your head being a scary place to be? That's not going to support you. Remember how I finished the last session where I spent so much time talking about your mindset and the importance of that daily discipline of gratitude and affirming what you want? You know, the real reason why I want you to do that is it gives you the inner strength. It gives you the inner strength that each and every one of us needs to have the courage to make a breakthrough. You see, if you're trying to break through to the next level of your income, and you're doing it based upon the old thoughts and the old beliefs you have in your head, the odds are you're going to be naturally pulled right back down to your old way of being. So we've got to replace some of those old thought patterns with the new thought patterns. Does that make sense, everybody? As you've heard me mention in the very first session, I have 2 boys, Michael and Stephen, and I do really hope you all get a chance to meet them, to give them a high five sometime at one of our annual success summits. They've been there since they were this big. They've grown up in this every day. Recently, my boys and I were spending some time on a Sunday, and we were having one of those kind of father-son moments where, we were having conversations, and I noticed that you know, one of my boys was, I don't want to say negative, but he was looking at things slightly the wrong way, let's just say. Have you ever done that before yourselves? Well, you know, as an 11-year-old, I'm very mindful that if he's going to continue to plant those seeds, those doubts, that there's a pretty good chance that could show up for him in the real world. And I just believe it's my obligation to give him the coaching he needs to get the right mindset to go out and succeed at whatever he chooses to do. So I'd like to have you write down what I shared with him that morning. I write down every day you can activate faith or fear. Write that down in your notes. Every day you can activate faith or fear. Now, if you look at the definition of both, faith and fear, they're essentially the same thing. Faith and fear is the belief in the unknown. The belief in the unknown. So what I shared with my son that morning was, you have a choice, Stephen. You can either every day activate the faith that you can do it, the faith that you have the opportunity, the faith that you can learn the lessons from your mistakes, or you can activate the fear. And guess what? When we activate the fear, we begin to talk ourselves out of doing the things that we want to do. Now, for Stephen, this was about his tennis game. For you, it's about your real estate business. But you know, sports and business are very similar. We take very similar paths where perhaps we learn and learn for a while and then we plateau for a little bit. And it isn't until either we have a massive breakdown, sometimes that has to happen in order for us to make that breakthrough. Well, Stephen in his tennis game, he was having a bit of a breakdown. He was losing to kids that he felt he should have beaten. But the challenge was, rather than activating the faith in himself and the faith in his abilities and focusing on what he needed to do to make it a reality to win the match, he was focusing on the fact that he was double faulting too often or his backhand wasn't working. And you know, just like your financial affirmation, the more you think about all that stuff, the more it begins to show up. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. So as we sit here in week 7, I cannot overemphasize enough. We've gone through 4 weeks, now 5, on marketing and lead generation. So you've got all these balls in the air, all this stuff going on. Is this the time that perhaps you normally quit? Is this the time that perhaps excuses begin to take over? Is this the time when you say to yourself, but Tom, you don't understand. I've got so much going on. I've got enough. I thought you signed up for this course because you wanted a breakthrough. See, I'm committed right now to show you how you can double your income. And to do it, I'm going to tell you a little story. I coached a young gal named Iris in San Diego, California. She was newer to real estate and happened to be newer to San Diego. She was working hard to build her business while getting to know a brand new city. When we met, she had just finished an exhausting second year in real estate, selling 11 homes to buyers. I shared with her the power of right focus, which you're going to learn about today. And in 1 month, she scheduled and went on 21 appointments and sold 6 houses that month. 11 sales the year before, and in January, using what you're going to learn today, she went on 21 appointments and sold 6 homes. Who wants to be next? I think every one of us, right? So today, we're going to learn what we've trained tens of thousands of agents before you all around the world to create a breakthrough and schedule way more appointments. So are you guys ready? So let's get started with the power of right focus. It starts by asking yourself this question. So in your notes, I actually want you to write this down. What takes up my mind space? What's going on in that great head of yours every day? As you show up to the office, what are you saying to yourself? When you show up to the office, what are you looking at and noticing? What's the chatter that's going on inside your head? You've heard me say before that your head is a scary place to be. It's not that I want you to affirm that, but change comes from awareness. If I know that my thoughts are leading me towards doubt, lack, and limitation, towards fear versus faith, then there's a pretty good chance I'm going to follow that hole, and that's not a place you want to be. So the first thing is just to acknowledge what goes through your mind when you first show up to the office. When I ask people this question, I find that there's basically 7 primary things that are going on in their head. Let's see if any of those relate to you. Number one is personal life drama. Is there anybody besides me that's had a little of that ever in their career? Right? Maybe today, going on right now as you're watching this. You know, personal life drama, outside distractions, at the end of the day, they take you off track. Number two is a transaction or a client that goes sideways. And again, that really takes us off track. Right or wrong, my friends? You know, that hallucinated, I'm going to make this much money, and then, oh no, it falls apart, and there's nothing you can do, and suddenly you're drinking at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's not good mental toughness. We don't want to do that. Number three, I'm always shocked by this. I say, what's going on in your head? And I hear things like, well, I've got so many things I need to do today. Well, what do you have to do? Well, I got to get my hair done, and then I got to run by, and I got to pick up my kids, and wait a minute, whoa, whoa, whoa. You have personal errands? That's what's dominating your mind space? That's going to be a distraction and not help you achieve your goals. I'm not saying not picking up your kids is a bad idea. You definitely need to pick up your kids. But if that's what's dominating your mind at 9:30 in the morning, Houston, we have a problem. Number four, this is a big one. Now listen, the way I say this, trying to get organized versus working your do, doing, and done board. See, prior to Breakthrough by Design, you were always trying to get organized. You know, you pull up to the office and you say, today is the day. I'm going to clean up my desk, I'm going to organize my files, and once and for all, I'm going to get that marketing piece out. Then you walk into the office, and isn't it funny? We've all been there before. You walk inside the office and you're like, today's the day. You see all the other agents, you're like trying to avoid them, and then what happens? We're like, do. We look down, oh, a penny. Oh, ooh, and that shiny penny, that moment of distraction. It's been said that 70% of salespeople have ADD. Do you know what ADD stands for? Attention disinterest disorder. When you're not interested, you're not focused. And if something shows up that distracts you, how easily the average person gets sidetracked into doing something else. This whole program is about creating laser focus. That's why that visual do, doing, and done board that we've showed you so many times is so important. When those projects are up in front of you, that becomes your focus, not trying to get organized. Look at number five. We hear this one a lot. Well, you know, today I got to make some calls. You know, I got to make some contacts, man. I got to get busy. Well, here's the challenge with that. If your focus is making calls, then what do? You make calls. Have you ever made calls, you know, done chicken scratches on a piece of paper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and at the end of making all those calls, you had no leads, you had no appointments, you had no new business, but at least you made the 15 calls? You know, for years, we were taught in real estate that real estate is a numbers game. And you know what? To a certain extent it is. But here's the challenge. If you're focusing on making calls and just having numbers, then you get numbers. What do we want to focus on? Number 6, making calls versus making calls with a mindset of scheduling appointments. Making calls with the mindset of scheduling appointments. Very different from just making calls. You know when you walk in the office and say, I got to follow up on Bob and Sally and I got to get them on the phone because there's a house available and they need to see it right away. That focus, my friends, is what we're talking about today. Having that type of focus every day in your business will create a massive breakthrough in the number of appointments you're scheduling. And then, of course, number 7, we all want closing transactions. Now, even though it's the last one on the list, that's a good distraction, right or wrong, my friends. There's something nice about closing the transaction, clean slate, starting over, working on the next one. Matter of fact, I bet there's a few of you watching right now that maybe, just maybe, you got more transactions going on than you've ever had before. Guess what I say to that? Congratulations. I work with a young gal today named Shauna Covington in Laguna Beach, California, a long-time personal coaching client and one of the top 10 agents in the world for Prudential. Interestingly enough, when we first started to work together, one of the things she shared with me was, I can't handle more than 6 listings. So if you're going to tell me I need to have more than 6 listings in my inventory, then we're not going to work together. Clearly, she needed a breakthrough. We had a conversation about how she could manage that, how she could organize it, and how by focusing on becoming a dominant listing agent, she could create a massive breakthrough in her business. And by the use of one assistant, that one assistant could make sure that the client care she desired could be satisfied, and in many cases do an even better job than she was doing. In 1 year, we doubled her income and grew her inventory from an average of 6 to an average of 18. That's a quality problem to have, my friends. And if you know anything about Laguna Beach, California, with an average sales price of almost $2 million a year, the question always is, but Tom, is she happy? What do you guys think? Well, I know she's happy, but let me tell you who really likes the fact that she's a part of our program? Her husband, Chad. I think he's on the golf course every day saying, honey, keep up the good work, as he makes another putt. So here's the question. Which one is taking up your mind space? Stop for a second and look at that list. Which one is the dominant thought that you're having throughout the day? Now again, why is it so important to acknowledge what's taking up your mind space? The simple answer is this. The human mind can only have one dominant thought at a time. That's it. If I said to you, give me your parents' names, you don't say them at the same time. You, in your mind, quickly go, Mom, Dad, or Dad, Mom. The human mind, as fast as it is, can only have one dominant thought at a time. And in breakthrough, if you want to take your business and your income to the next level, in this case, the dominant thought we want to have is, I'm a lean, mean appointment setting machine. Say that with me right now. I'm a lean, mean appointment setting machine. So when you're doing your lead follow-up calls or your emails or your texts, the only focus should be on scheduling an appointment with great people you want to help buy or sell real estate. Not just talking to people and checking in, but scheduling an appointment. To create the focus, before you make the lead follow-up calls, one of the tricks is I ask myself a better question. Look at the question inside your workbook. If you ask yourself before you make the calls, how many appointments am I committed to schedule right now? Imagine this, I'm about to do my hour of power, and of course I want to schedule appointments during that time. So before I make the calls, I say, all right, Tom, how many people are you committed to schedule an appointment with right now? And by saying it out loud, or even in your head, and declaring the answer, you're focusing your mind on what it is that you want. Versus, have you ever maybe in the last couple of weeks started an hour of power like this? Oh, okay, I'm doing the program, I'm gonna make the calls. But it's funny, with your mindset like that, I bet that 1 hour felt like it took weeks. But when you say to yourself, hey, how many people am I committed to schedule an appointment with today? And you have that sort of energy about you, that swagger about you, then guess what? That hour goes by this fast. And when you look down and say, I just scheduled 2 appointments in an hour, you're going to begin to really feel good about your confidence, your belief, and your faith in yourself. Now, by asking and answering that question, all you're doing is focusing your mind and utilizing that wonderful old statement we've all heard a million times, the law of attraction. In addition to asking the question, I recommend you track all of your appointments that you schedule visually. Something as simple as a year-at-a-glance calendar will play into your competitive nature. Is there anybody competitive watching this right now? Right, so just a few of us. And if you are competitive, it'll play into it. As you see, I scheduled another one. I got another one. I got another one. Or, oh man, I missed a day. I've got to get 2 today. And when you begin to create that kind of mindset and that kind of habit, your business only goes one direction. The last thing I'd ask you to consider, and you may have picked up on this, is I'm a big fan of affirmations. So you heard me say earlier, I'm a lean, mean appointment setting machine. Let's say that again. You ready? I'm a lean, mean appointment setting machine. So this is exactly what I taught Iris. Remember Iris? She sold 11 homes the year before, had scheduled 21 appointments in January, and sold 6 houses. She used all of these techniques and created that monster breakthrough in performance, which is exactly what I want you to do. So for several years, interestingly enough, I taught a course called TAG, the appointment game, teaching all of these skills that you're learning today. And the average student that would attend in the first 2 days would schedule 5 appointments while they were doing the workshop. So in the middle of the seminar, at a break, they would go outside, make the phone calls, send text messages, and begin scheduling appointments like absolute magic. Matter of fact, one of the records that we experienced during a TAG event in New Jersey is we had one client, Paula, who scheduled 21 listing appointments in 2 days during the course. 21 appointments. Now, here's what was fantastic about it. She actually came up to me afterwards in this, hysterical, so excited emotion. She said, where are you doing the seminar next week? I need to go again. Now my response to her was, learn the lesson. What was it? She said, it's absolutely incredible. Sometimes I just don't think about it. Sometimes I don't look at my database the right way. I don't look at the leads the right way. By simply thinking about, can I get another appointment? Can I schedule an appointment with this person? I asked her, I said, are some of those 21 appointments a little iffy? You know what her response was? Iffy listing appointments are better than no listing appointments. I went, oh, I'm going to add that one into my own notes. So now you can experience the benefits of both of these trainings. So let's talk about what appointments matter. So in your workbook, you'll see that question, what appointments matter? So obviously, buyer consultations with first-time buyers, if that's something you're interested in, those are good appointments. Yes, everybody? And of course, move-up buyers, those are always good. Investors, if that's something you're great at, or even relocation buyers. All of those are great appointments to have. The one we always need to be mindful of is showing appointments. Because it's pretty easy to go out and schedule showing appointments without one buyer or two buyers or three buyers you're working with. So showing appointments are great. They're just not as great as meeting that first customer that wants to buy or meeting that customer that wants to sell. Does that make sense? Many of the agents we work with actually count, 4 or 5 showing appointments as one appointment. Now we all know there's an agent or two perhaps sitting in your chair right now that has taken out that buyer that you showed 100 houses to. Have you guys ever had that experience? 100, maybe even more. By the way, on the next few sessions coming up, we're going to show you how to simplify that process and work today's buyer more effectively online with the goal to make less showing appointments and ultimately getting more signed contracts. So something to look forward to. So at the end of the day, the appointments that matter, first-time buyers, right? Move-up buyers, investors, relocation buyers, etc. And of course, listing appointments. All of these appointments lead towards signed contracts and ultimately closings, and that's what we all want. So let me ask you, what's the most listing appointments and new buyer appointments you scheduled in 1 month? Think about that number right now. What's the most appointments you've ever scheduled in 1 month? Listing appointment and new buyer, not showing. Think about that number and write it down. Have you scheduled 5 in a month? Have you scheduled 10 in a month? Have you scheduled 15 in a month? There might be someone right now in this training that's scheduled 25 or 30 appointments in a month. Now, why is it important that I'm bringing this up? Because in the next 30 days, I want you to shatter that number. I want you to break through that number. So if you've scheduled 8 appointments and that's your best month ever, let's go for 16 or 20 this month. Oh my goodness, Tom, I'm already so busy. That's a breakthrough. That's what we wanted. That's why you're doing the course. I want you even more busy and even more focused. So I'd like you to declare right now a number. Just write down what number would be a monstrous breakthrough for you in terms of scheduling first appointments. First-time buyers, all that, those first meetings with buyers, or that listing appointment. What would be a monstrous number for you? Decide it and write it down right now. All right, I think you get the point. Now let's discuss the rules of great lead generation. So in your notes, a lot of stuff inside here. Some you'll have to write. You'll want to write your own notes in a lot.
All right. So what did everybody write down?
1.
So what's the most you have scheduled in a month as far as listings? 1? 1?
Right now,
What's the most you have scheduled as far as buyer appointments?
4.
4? Good. But what's a huge number you could schedule?
10.
All right?
Gotta say it and believe it, because it's so doable.
Probably at least 20 if I really
Yeah.
worked on it.
That's what I put down, because that's technically only 5 a week. So that means that's 1 a day if I did Monday through Friday. So it's like, that made it sound a little more realistic. Fred, what about for you?
There's 30 days in a month. I think I can see one person a day.
Okay,
I think I could actually go to somebody's house one day out of an 8-hour period and do something.
all right.
So you're saying 30?
That's my goal. That's what I wanted to do.
All right,
see one
all right,
person a day.
all right. Because I think when you break it down like that, then it's like, it definitely can be manageable. Absolutely. Good.
2 hours
Thank
on
you.
the phone, 2 hours door knocking.
Yeah. And now's the weather, now's the time. Oh, here, sorry.
Lot is included in the workbook. The first rule is to know your customer's communication strategy. To know your customer's communication strategy. You know, one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was to treat every possible client like they're the very best client you have, because more often than not, they become just that. And one of the ways you're going to treat people really well is to understand their model of the world. Today's consumer could prefer email or phone or text or even through a social media site. The bottom line is, if you want to schedule more appointments, you've got to know and then stay in rapport with their preferred communication strategy. Does that make sense, my friends? We've all had the leads where you got an email address and you email them and they never respond, and you call them and they never respond, and then you send them a text
Then you roll with it.
and they respond to you instantly. Right? We've all had that experience. So it's about knowing your customer's ideal communication strategy and then staying in it. The second thing I wrote down is to do this, just simply ask every prospect you meet, what's the very best way for us to stay connected? What's the very best way for me to connect with you? Here's my rule. If they say email, take their email and make sure you get their cell phone just in case. Right or wrong, everybody? Right? So some people are fantastic on email. They live and die by it, and they've got their email rules, and they're organized, and they schedule, and they follow up. And others sometimes give us an email address knowing they never respond. So if they give you email, always get their cell phone as well. The third thing I wrote down is, while you're asking these questions, it's also important to ask who else is involved in the process and capture their relationship and information on that person as well. I know none of you watching have ever had the experience where you met one person and there was 2 people involved in the transaction and you only had a relationship with this one, and you finally get the appointment and you have no relationship with this side of the transaction. Sometimes that doesn't go so well, right or wrong, my friends. So if we really want to connect and really understand who that customer is, you got to know all the parties involved and begin to create a relationship with both. Number 2, to become a master of really converting, you've got to become great at building rapport. Now, how many times have we heard in our sales career, you've got to become better at building rapport? Have you guys heard those stories before? And we all know, just like I'm going to mention today, a wonderful little book by Michael Brooks. And Michael Brooks wrote this great book called Instant Rapport. And if you haven't downloaded the audio or read the book, I would certainly encourage you to do so. Here's what I want you to get. What we know is this. People want to do business with people that are just like themselves. That's one of those basic rules of lead follow-up. What that means is people are looking for sameness, not difference. So if I want to work with you because we're like each other, I'm looking for where are we the same. Now in the world of building rapport, we all know you only have about 60 seconds to build rapport with someone. And inside that 60 seconds, like it or not, every human being, you and me included, we're judging and assessing that person that we're meeting. Even if we've already met them before, that judging and assessing is always taking place. So my rule is I build rapport with everyone, every time, no matter what. I never assume rapport. I was invited one time to do a seminar in Austin, Texas. And if you can imagine this, I was for a weekend in New York City. Now, automatically, is there a difference between New York City and Austin, Texas? What do you think? 2 amazingly great cities, but generally speaking in New York City, they talk a little bit faster, they move a little bit quicker, and not saying they don't in Austin, but when you're really with people in the great state of Texas, they got that beautiful little twang, and they use a little bit of different words, and you know, as many workshops as I've done all over the great state of Texas, you can't even say go on an appointment, because you know what they call them? They call them visits, right? They got a different word for everything. Well, guess what? I'm in New York City, I'm with my wife, we're going to dinner at 11 o'clock at night, we're going to see Broadway shows, and then on Monday, I'm speaking to the top 100 female agents of this extraordinary company in town. And I show up, And I'm kind of in that New York state of mind, which is a little bit different from Austin, Texas, right, my friends? So the person introduces me, and I get up and I start to do my talk, and I'm like, ladies, I'm so excited to be here. You know, we're gonna have such a wonderful day, 8 straight hours of working on training and all the things we're gonna do, and here's what we're gonna do. So energy. And I'm watching 100 gals like this. Now watch, am I in or out of rapport in that moment? And I know some of them are thinking, oh my goodness, this is 8 hours, you know. Who's responsible for building rapport? It's never the client, my friends, it's always you. The great news is, I picked up on it pretty quickly and I stopped and I said, ladies, isn't that an excellent example of how quickly we can get out of rapport with somebody? Y'all know in the great state of Texas, when somebody shows up, I don't care where they're from, after a few days, they're just like us, aren't they? And I watched 100 gals go, yeah. And I just finished my seminar doing exactly what I hope you might do as well. If we're looking for people that are just like us to do business, that means I've got to pay attention to people's rate of speech. Some people are fast talkers. Have you figured out what I am? Some people are slower talkers, and some people have a medium pace. Some people use certain words, like visual words, or kinesthetic, more feeling-oriented language. If we're picking up on the subtleties of our customers, if we're not reading a script, but instead really listening to their rate of speech, their volume, their tone, then we can build real rapport and get beyond that natural sales barrier that every customer faces. Have you all had a situation where you were being sold before, where maybe you felt a little out of rapport? Was it comfortable? Were you thinking to yourself, gosh, can I get 5 or 6 more hours of this? Or it was, how quickly can I get out of this deal? Well, the key, if you want to be great at setting appointments, is to remember, I've got to build rapport with every person I talk to. Every person I talk to, every time, reestablish rapport. So how do we do it? We're going to mimic or mirror their rate of speech. We're going to sound like they sound. Now, I know as you're watching this, you might say, but wait a minute, Tom, what if I'm calling somebody with a really strong accent? Should I fake a strong accent? The answer is no. But you know you can have your language be a little choppier to perhaps match theirs, and that's okay. If you don't have an accent, don't fake an accent, because guess what happens when you show up? They're going to go, what happened? And then you're really out of rapport. So maybe just pay attention to their rate of speech, or their tone, or their volume as a way to really connect and build that solid rapport that we want to get to the yes. Major point number 3. We must become a master of qualifying to determine our client's real motivation. Let me say it again. We've got to become a master of qualifying to determine the client's real motivation. Have you ever dealt with a client that told you one thing, and then when you actually got together with them face to face, it was entirely different? That's an uncomfortable situation. Well, just like a doctor is going to walk in and ask you a series of questions to find out what's going on, you need to be doing the same. As I mentioned to you before, we solve problems for a profit. Now, what we have to discover in qualifying any lead is, what problems are they facing that I've got solutions for? Whether that's buying a house or selling a home. Whatever their issue is, we need to identify what it is and solve that problem. So let's take a look at your workbook, and you can see some of the questions that all of our best clients use. Questions like, as you're on the phone, tell me what you'd like to do. Buying or selling. Tell me what you'd like to do. Question number 2, how soon would you like to do it? How soon would you like to do it? And then you'll notice behind that it says, tell me more about that. Because sometimes you talk to a client and they say, well, we'd like to do it in the next 2 months, or we'd like to do it in the next 6 months, or we'd like to do it in the next 8 months. Well, tell me more about that. And then you begin to discover what's really going on. Well, we've got to do it in the next 4 months, and here's why. I've got a job promotion, or I've got to do a transfer, or my wife and I want to stay together, and we want to make the move, we don't want to do it separately. That's the real motivation, not necessarily the time frame. The third question I love. So what's causing you to make the move? What's causing you to make the move? To buy or to sell? And again, we're getting a deeper understanding of what's driving them, what's causing them to do it. What is their motive to act? And again, tell me more about that. Then we ask, so tell me again who else is involved in the process, and how do they feel about making this move? I'm shocked by the number of people that don't ask who else is involved. Because you could be talking to a couple and then discover that their uncle is on title on the listing, and suddenly you can't get a listing contract signed because you didn't know about that. The more information we know, the better we can decide how to best serve. Could you imagine walking into a doctor's office and saying, you know, I've got a bit of a headache. If your doctor looked at you and said, excellent, brain surgery, would you be a little bit nervous? Or would you say, I was kind of thinking maybe Advil, or, you know, let's slow that down a little bit, Turbo. The reality is, my friends, we've got to ask a lot of questions to find out what's really going on, so we can either schedule an appointment or discover that we really shouldn't be talking to that client anymore. Back on the script, I love this question. What has to happen in order for you to make the move, to buy or to sell? What has to happen? That question is so important. Why? Every human being, you and I, we've got a process for how we do things. You've got a process for how you get up in the morning. You've got a process for how you start your day. We are habit individuals, human beings. It's what we do. Everything is process, everything is habit. So in selling a home or in buying a home, I want to know what's their process. If I'm talking to a potential buyer and I say, what's your process? Like, what has to happen in order for you to buy the home? What if they say, well, what we need to do is see 7,000 homes that are on the market, walk through every one of them with you, holding my hand, while sipping on a Starbucks. You're going to be a little bit nervous. Now, it's an exaggerated example, but understand this, my friends. If you don't know the client's process, guess what you're doing? You're rolling the dice on every presentation versus delivering on their model of the world, how they want it done. Then I love the question, do you have a plan B in case that doesn't work out? What's your plan B? Now, what do we want to hear? No, we have no plan B. We have to buy. We have to sell. But if you're talking to a seller and you say, what's your plan B in case this doesn't work out? And they say, well, you know, we can always rent it out, or my kids could just stay here, and we don't really, we don't really have to sell. Warning, warning, warning. I went from hot listing appointment to slow down a second, I've got to dig a little deeper. Now, by asking questions like this, you're going to discover the prospect's real motivation and know if they're the type of customer you want to work with. So I know you're going to incorporate those questions into your lead follow-up and into your qualifying to win more often. Now let's look at number 4. You want to put each lead into the appropriate lead follow-up system. Every lead has got to go into the appropriate lead follow-up system. So we know there's basically 2 kinds of leads, and I'm not talking buyer or seller, I'm talking short-term and long-term. So our long-term leads, we want to put those inside our database. If they're a buyer, here's the general rule of thumb. If they say to you, hey, we want to buy a house in a year, my experience tells us we should cut that time frame in half. Because someone that says a year, in 5 or 6 months, maybe at an open house and end up writing an offer, and it should have been with you, but because you triggered them for a year to follow up, you lost the opportunity. If it's a seller, please write this down. If it's a seller, cut their time frame by 2/3. If they're a seller, cut their time frame by 2/3. So I'm going to put them into my database, I'm going to put them into my system, and of course, we're going to be dripping on them. But as we discuss it today, I'm a big fan of when I've got that pool of people that I'm dripping on, I'm also going to be reaching out and talking to them and creating more of a relationship. Do you want to know why? Have you ever had a client's motivation change on you? You guys experience that? They say, oh, we're thinking about moving in a year. There is nothing worse than driving by that house and seeing a for sale sign on the listing you thought you were going to get, and you said, but they told me a year. It's your responsibility. Cut their time frame by 2/3 and follow up. Now, when it comes to their short-term leads or your short-term leads, you know these need to be on those business tracking boards that we've been discussing. You should keep those buyers right in front of you and those sellers right in front of you. I know this many weeks in to Breakthrough by Design, you've got that board up and you're already seeing the benefit of keeping those leads in front of you. We're going to get more into long-term in that calling and follow-up strategy in a minute, but let's look at number 5. When calling your leads, you always want to get into a peak state. Let me say it again. When you're calling your leads, before I'm going to schedule that appointment, I want to get myself into a peak physical state so I'm bringing the energy. Now, my friends, let's be very clear. People buy energy. They buy passion. They buy enthusiasm. Could you imagine if you're a seller and someone calls you and says, hi, I'm just, following up because, the market's making lots of adjustments, and, you're not going to buy from that person. That's a snooze fest. You're going to hang up. In earlier sessions, I had mentioned to you that one of the reasons why consumers select the agent over others is one might be an energy-sucking vampire. We've all heard the phrase Debbie Downer. So we can't be that Debbie Downer. We've got to get ourselves into a peak physical state. Now, the fastest way to do it, and I'd like all of you right now to do it with me, is simply raise your arms. Just raise your arms like this. Now notice, by just simply raising your arms, now come on, don't make me come out there. I'm going to show up in your office. Raise your arms. By raising your arms like this, you change what's going on with your physiology. When you change your physiology, the way your body's moving, keep those arms up. When you change the way your body's moving, you change your mental state. So I've watched people that were slightly depressed simply raise their arms, put a little smile on their face. Come on, everybody, put a big smile on your face. Come on, big, goofy, silly smile. Play along. We've got rapport here, right? So big, goofy, silly smile. And then, guess what? Just by doing this and moving around a little bit, you automatically change your state. Now, I'm going to give you one more example. Put your arms down, and I want you to do this with me. I want you to take your hands and go like that. And now, I want you to rub those hands together. Now, the faster you rub your hands together, the more money you make. Oh, smoke, be careful. All right, so you rub those hands together, and then on the count of 3, we're going to clench our fists together, and we're going to say the word yes. So let's do it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yes!
Okay, now hold on. You're watching this. Pay attention. I want you to do it again with me, because I can't see you. I can see them, but I'm paying attention to you right now. So let's get those hands together. And on the count of 3, give me a big yes. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Yes!
Now, when you do that, how do you feel? Is your energy different?
Yes.
Is your energy better?
Yes.
The answer is, of course it is. So if I want to get myself into a peak state, I can do this. Which, by the way, if you don't have a private office and you want a private office, just spend several hours walking through your office like this. And your broker owner will probably say, we're going to put you in your own private office. Now, the second side of that is every day, yes. And then, of course, doing the affirmations like we recommended, asking yourself the powerful questions, all of this and more is going to get you in that state that people want to buy from. People don't want to buy from the energy-sucking vampire. They want to buy from the person that they feel is going to bring the energy they need to get the job done. So the next rule, number 6, the primary focus is to schedule an appointment. Now, I want you to consider the following in your notes. When you're on the phone with a prospect, how many times do you ask for the appointment? You've all seen those wonderful old stats that say 80% of all salespeople ask for the sale 1 time. And it usually sounds something like this. So what do you think? That's not exactly a close that's going to get you any response that you want. And if anything, if you say things like, what do you think? You're actually planting a little seed in their mind that maybe they need to think more about it before they decide. So that one is a no-no. Here's what I want you to write down. I want you to have at least 3 different closes that you can use when you're talking to a customer to move them from a I'm not sure or we need to think about it to a scheduled appointment in your book. So you can see an example there inside your workbook that said, if I could show you how I'm able to get my clients top dollar for their homes, regardless of the market, would it be worth just 15 minutes of your time to meet? What would be better for you, Monday or Tuesday at 4? As simple as that basic if close is, by having 2 or 3 of those in your toolbox, you are absolutely going to schedule more appointments. Now on the flip side, if you don't learn these skills, if you don't practice and rehearse and memorize these basic closes we've included for you, guess what's going to have to happen? You're just going to have to follow up way more often than you need to. And I don't know about you, but I don't think you're running around with an excess amount of time. So to become efficient with our time, we've got to be efficient with our dialogue. Now, consider in your notes, still under number 6, rather than following up again, like I just mentioned, if they want to do something in a few weeks, write this down, start scheduling future appointments. Start scheduling future appointments. Just like your doctor or my wife's hairstylist can schedule appointments 2 and 3 months out, there's absolutely no reason why you can't do the same. You know, gosh, we probably need about 30 days before we can get that done. No problem. Let me look at my calendar. Gosh, okay, so that would make it the 29th, which is that last week. Did you want to do it during the week or on the weekend? Well, we really didn't think about that yet. Well, when would you normally meet with someone like this? Well, you probably do it on the weekend. Okay, so that actually would make it into the next month. So the weekend would be around this date. Is Saturday or Sunday better for you? Well, we're scheduling this 30 days out? Well, absolutely. Just like my doctor or my hairstylist, my schedule's busy, your schedule's busy. I honor that you need 30 days. Let's go ahead and pencil in now in your calendar and mine when we're going to get together. So Saturday or Sunday, Saturday great, mornings or afternoons, great, I've got it penciled in. I'll make sure I follow up with a text message or an email or a phone call a week before to make sure we're ready. Sound good? That appointment is 100 times better than chasing another lead. You guys with me on this? In your notes, write this down. It says, bottom line, never accept a no when a yes is possible. Never accept a no when a yes is possible. Never accept, well, could you call me again in the next couple weeks? You know, we're still working on this, or we're changing that. Could you follow up with me then? Gosh, why don't we just go ahead and schedule an appointment now? We'll make it tentative, and I'll follow up with you in the next couple weeks, but let's get it firm, because actually, oh, that Saturday I'm already booked. Wouldn't it be fun to say to a customer, let's go 5 weeks out. Oh, that Saturday, oh, I'm busy. I've got 4 showings that day and a listing appointment. Can you squeeze me in on Sunday, or should we do it on Friday? What's the customer going to say if they're thinking, you're busy 5 weeks out? People want to work with people that are busy. Does that make sense? Not too busy to treat them well, but they want to know that you're active and you're in the game. So you can use all kinds of these scripts that I'm sharing with you. I just want you to write down one last thought regarding this. Remember, all the money is in scheduling appointments. All the money is in scheduling appointments. That's your focus. The last one, number 7. There is a pretty good chance you might experience a few objections when you're doing your lead follow-up. What do you guys think? I know you've never heard things like, we need to think it over, or I need to talk to somebody first, or, you know, I've got a friend in the business. You know, every time I hear that, I've got a friend in the business, one day before I'm done with my career, I'm going to say to a prospect who says, I've got a friend in the business, if you didn't have a friend in real estate, I would assume you had no friends. I mean, it's just, everybody's got a friend in real estate, right or wrong, my friends. Everybody does. So again, the ability to say, I can appreciate that, and let me ask you a question. Are you looking for perhaps a second opinion or another approach? I know you're friends, and I respect that because I work with a lot of my friends as well, and yet most of my customers don't want to leave a dime on the table. They're looking to sell for as much money as possible, as quickly as possible, and I'm just convinced my marketing plan is going to be slightly different from your friends. Wouldn't it be worth just 15 minutes of our time to get together? You know, when you know what to say, how many times have I said it to you? When you know what to say, you've got knowledge, you've got confidence, you've got power, you've got courage. When you don't know what to say, and they say, I've got a friend in the business, you say, okay. And that's not a good way to handle that objection. That's allowing a no to take place when you could have just said one more thing to get the yes. So in your workbook and online at tomferry.com, we've included a bunch of objection handlers. The key for you is to identify the objections you receive the most, and then take the time to write out the answers. Or look at what we've shared and modify the language so it works for you. That's the key. You've got to be comfortable and confident with what you're saying. Now, I have to ask you, has there ever been a time you were working with a prospect who you knew wanted to move forward, wanted to take action, but something was holding them back? Have you guys ever experienced that before? Well, perhaps you just didn't have the questions to ask that would naturally bring it out. So I believe that selling is the ability, which means it's a trained skill. Selling is the ability to ask a series of questions that naturally and automatically lead you and the prospect to a mutually desired end result. Mutually desired. Let me say it to you again. Selling is the ability to ask a series of questions that naturally and automatically lead you and the prospect to a mutually desired end result. Check out these 3 questions that we've taught thousands of people, and they're using it every day to help their customers get out of their head and into the right action. Now, if you're looking at your workbook, you see question number 1. What's the worst case scenario if you take this action? If you buy a home, if you write an offer, if you schedule an appointment, if you invite me over, you can put in whatever context you want at the end. But you want to ask, what's the worst case scenario? And you want to ask that first, and here's why. People do not move forward when they're thinking about fear or worry or doubt or concern. They're not going to take action in that state of mind. So it's your job to ask the question, what's the worst case scenario if we schedule an appointment? Well, the worst case scenario is, we commit ourselves and we're just not really sure if we're committed. So I'm getting more information about that prospect. What's the worst case scenario if we write an offer a little above asking and we get the home? What's the worst case scenario? Well, I'm a little bit concerned about the additional payment I'm going to have to make, and I'm concerned that is this the right house, and am I racing in too fast? We've all heard these things from prospects before. The difference is with these 3 powerful questions, I'm going to draw it out of them in a sequence and pattern that allows them to finish in a peak state, ready to make a decision. So I ask question number 2 after I've listened to all their concerns. I ask, well, what's the most likely scenario? And it's interesting, when you ask what's the most likely scenario, if you schedule an appointment, list your home with me, write an offer, buy a house, whatever the context is, we go from the worst case scenario, we hear their fears, then we say, what's the most likely scenario? And almost every time, they go from a no to a, well, probably the most likely scenario is we buy a house when we move forward and we're in and we'll be happy. That sounds like the sale just occurred. What do you guys think? And it happens every time. These questions are so great for negotiations, but in this context, for scheduling an appointment and getting somebody over the hurdle. But I don't stop there. Even if they say, well, and you kind of get a yes, but I want to finish with, well, let me ask you, what's the best case scenario? What's the best case scenario? Well, the best case scenario is we don't have to look at any more houses and we can finally move in and my wife is pregnant and here we go. And just like that, my friends, the sale has happened. Not because you tried to twist their arm or say something to create urgency. You did what all great salespeople do. You ask questions that naturally draw it out, and the natural end result is a yes or a no, and you're fine with both. I know you want the yes, but I'd rather get a no than have a maybe. You with me on this? Now, why are these questions so important? Again, start with their fear. Start with their concern and recognize people don't make decisions when they're nervous, when they're fearful, when there's doubt, they don't decide. We've got to get into a place of neutrality and then ultimately lead them back up to what's possible. So begin incorporating those questions into your business and into your lead follow-up and watch the results you produce. Now, let's transition and talk about long-term leads again. We all know the numbers. The average real estate consumer is shopping online for up to 18 months before they engage with a real estate professional. Now we know that they're going to be on sites like Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.ca and all these other sites because they're trying to get their information together, but the data shows us it's at about the 18-month point where they finally engage with a real estate agent. So with buyers, you should be adding every person you meet who's really far out into some kind of automated listing drip campaign through your MLS and your database. How many of you are already doing something like this, right? It's easy, it's accessible, it's through your MLS, it's a no-brainer. And I wrote down with potential sellers, on the other hand, long-term sellers, we're going to add them into our database, but here's the key. I want you to add them into your database as if they were one of your past clients or your sphere, which means they're going to be getting your just listed and just sold cards, they're going to be getting your newsletters, they're going to be getting all of that positive stuff about you and your business, even though they're not a client yet. But again, if we want to really have that lead fall in love with the possibility of working with us, we need to begin to treat them just like we would one of our great customers or one of our friends in our database. Now, those two are easy. The money, though, the money is going to be made, please write this down, by calling or texting these leads every 3 to 4 months. By calling or texting these leads every 3 to 4 months. So I meet a buyer who says, I want to buy a house in 18 months. All that means is in my schedule, in one of my hour of hours, I'm going to pull up that list and I'm going to reach out. I'm going to touch base. I'm going to check in. Remember, people want to do business with people they feel are just like them. And most people out there are pretty nice and pretty courteous, especially if they were the kind of person that gave you their information and shared their desires to buy a home or to sell a home. Honor that caring and take the time to follow up, to build that relationship. You know, an email is good, a mailer is great, but at the end of the day, there's nothing better than you. You getting on the phone and having that conversation, just saying, I was thinking about you today, and I'm wondering how you're doing, and I know you guys have talked about buying a home in the next 6 months, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm here and I'm ready, and I'm always looking at opportunities for you. So when you're ready, give me a call. Well, you want to talk about creating some relationship and connection, and you say, but Tom, the time it's going to take. Marketing and lead generation is about creating leads. All the money, though, is in scheduling appointments. If I can make that appointment scheduling opportunity easier by making a few phone calls, leaving a few voicemails, and touching them a few times, I'm going to do it. How about you guys? I hope so. Now, you never know, and here's the real deal, you never know when someone's motive for action can change. So what you don't want is you just put them into a system and then, heaven forbid, be driving by their house, like I mentioned, and see a for sale sign, or not follow up on them and finally call them, and you get this when you call their home. Dee-dee-dee, the number to the house that you didn't sell them is... I know that's not what that message says, but that's what we hear. So we want to make sure we're following up and checking in. Now, we've included in your workbook a series of dialogues for making these lead follow-up calls, so make sure you take the time to review them as soon as the session ends, so you can feel comfortable and confident and have the courage of knowing what to say. So as we wrap up, I've got some assignments for you. I know we covered a lot of ground, but before I even give you the assignments, look at me, and I want you to repeat after me. I'm a lean, mean appointment setting machine. Come on, say it with me. I'm a lean, mean appointment setting machine. If Iris can do it, if Paula can do it, if Shauna can do it, if so many of our clients around the world can switch their focus from drama or issues or making phone calls to scheduling appointments, I know you can create the same breakthrough. Remember, you made a commitment. You wrote down a number that was maybe double the number of appointments you ever scheduled in a month. I'm expecting a tweet from you or a post on Facebook at facebook.com/Coach Tom Ferry letting me know what you did. And by the way, in 30 days when I get that tweet or I get that post on Facebook, if it says, you know, hey Tom, the most I've ever said is 8, and I scheduled a goal for 20, and I totally screwed up and only got 12, I'm going to laugh all the way to the bank with you. Congratulations, that's a breakthrough. Remember, goals are not necessarily something you've got to strive for. I want you to push yourself beyond the norm. Go for that big goal, that big, sexy opportunity that would stretch you beyond your limits to truly create a breakthrough and be as extraordinary as I know you are. So let's look at our assignments. We want to continue to schedule your hour of power every day and make those calls, but now we're making them with the focus to schedule appointments every time. I want you to schedule 2 hours to work on your business and the projects, perhaps starting with reviewing your lead follow-up campaigns and what's going to be your process when you meet that buyer for putting them into that ongoing campaign to schedule that phone call every 3 to 4 months, not just drifting on them like everybody else does with some MLS email. We want to create the relationship. So schedule some time this week to work on your business to make sure you're making those contacts and creating those relationships so you're going to win. You know I'm going to remind you every day, what are you grateful for? And every day, that financial affirmation. Cannot stress it enough, going to keep reminding you all the way through to the end. In addition, I want you to review the rules in your workbook, and I want you to look for what adjustments you may need to make. Maybe with some of the questions, or always asking, what's the best way for us to stay engaged? Cell phone, email, text, Facebook, I don't care. I want to stay in your model of the world. In addition, make sure your business tracking boards are up and you're keeping track of your hottest leads at all times. Remember, the goal is every day to take one lead off because they went into your appointment book and add another 1 or 2 on. In addition, I wrote down, I would encourage you to hang up the qualifying dialogues right out of your workbook somewhere inside your environment so you always have those scripts handy and you're ready to qualify and get that appointment. In addition, I want you to set up, as I mentioned, I can't emphasize it enough, in your schedule, in your calendar, when are you going to make those follow-up calls? This is not something where you say, once a quarter I'm going to do it. It's setting up in your mind and in your system. When I meet someone who says a year, I know I've got to touch them a couple times, maybe 3, before that year is up. So it's important that you work on your business this week to really make sure you've got that tight. Remember, marketing and lead generation is finding the leads, but your lead follow-up strategy is scheduling appointments, and all the money is in scheduling appointments. Thanks so much for being a part of today's session. Have a great week. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. So you're a lean, mean appointment setting machine. Look, it's week 7. This is where the best get better. Now is the time to be listening to those bonus audio messages I gave you to reinforce both the habits of what to be thinking and what to be doing to be scheduling even more appointments. You and I both know this is where the real breakthrough begins. So take advantage of all the tools you were given with this program, and let's create that breakthrough.
What's your thought?
I'm a lean, mean appointment setting machine.
Amen, amen. All right, top 10 sale techniques. So, just out of curiosity, let's just see.
I'm definitely confident, adventurous, active,
All right.
vivacious, eclectic, and supple.
Really fast.
Ambitious, creative.
Last time.
Sales.
Thank you. You were on that. Last time when we did this this group, week 7, I printed off objection handlers. It's the top 38 objection handlers.
Does everybody?
Yeah, do you guys have a copy of them? These are the top 38 objections we have. It's not actually part of the series, but I printed it off and put it in the books. So make sure you have it, because if I list my home with you and buy my next home with you, will you cut your commission? I have to keep my promise to a friend or a previous agent I talked to that I was going to use them. You know, a bunch of different things. We're waiting to see if loans and values change. You know, a bunch of different things. And the more familiar you are, because these are standard things. And the better you are at answering them and with competently and letting people know, the better. Because it's the people who can truly convey that, yes, now's the best time. You know, if we don't have a good answer for the commission cutters, they'll go with the commission cutter. You know, if we don't have a good answer for, well, what if the values, what if values still go up? Okay, you know, well, are you looking to buy or sell? You know, if you're looking to sell, what is one of the main things that people don't think about? Okay, yeah, you sold your home at the peak. Now what? You're gonna have to buy. So are you better buying now and letting values still go up a little bit because you're gonna buy a nicer home that's actually gonna appreciate more, and you're actually gonna take even more advantage of the market continuing to go up. So
Lock in the price.
yeah, exactly. Or on the flip side, if you know, are you looking to rent or whatever, are you gonna downsize? And if you're gonna downsize, then again, do it now before prices go up, because you're gonna have a higher payment once that goes up. So you're better off having your lower payment now and reaping the benefits of the appreciation. See, it's being able to competently answer people's questions the way we need to. You know, and the answer may be, no, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, right now is not the best time. You're not gonna net as much money as you need to. It really does behoove you to wait about 6 months. And then you follow up with them for 6 months and make sure that in 6 months you did exactly that, you know? But that is it. If you get, you know, here's a great question we get a lot, and this will dictate a lot of success. Hey Fred, you're a realtor, right?
Right.
Great, how's the market?
It's booming right now.
I'm so glad you asked. If you want
See?
to buy, sell, rent.
That, you didn't ask any questions. When people are asking about the market, you will get probably 30 more conversions throughout the year, because we get asked a lot, by in turn asking a question. Oh, the market is crazy right now. Are you looking to buy or sell?
Bye.
There we go. Oh, buying. Did you hear that interest rates are going to be going up like 3 different times this year? Have you thought about that? Now might be the time to make your move. Or looking to sell, you know? Once we actually pick, and know what they're doing. Oh, I'm an investor. Oh, Jiminy Christmas, that changes everything, you know? There's a lot. So make sure we're asking the questions, because we're going to get asked, and we're going to have a standardized group of questions we're asked, and we're going to have a standard group of objections that you're going to get thrown on a daily basis. People come to our website, almost always. Hey, thank you very much for using my website, www.breakthroughrealestate.az. We pride ourselves on having an awesome website, so how can we help you? Oh, we're just looking. What's your answer? That's going to be a standard response you will get from people. Once in a blue moon, we need to buy a home tomorrow. Very rarely, right? You're almost going to get, oh, we're just looking. What's your response?
Well, what is your time frame possibly for buying or selling?
Well, they said we're just looking. So is that could be?
This is the really best time to look.
There's a common thing that he mentioned, which he didn't really go off of. Okay, when you get an objection handler, an objection, what's the first thing you do?
Repeat it.
And then, oops, I can't write. That says reaffirm. Oh, you're just looking. That's fantastic. When are you hoping to be in your new home? Oh, you're never going to move. That's great. So let's say things were to line up perfectly for you to move. Where would you move to in that case? You know, you could come up with a bunch of different things, but repeating and reaffirming, it almost buys you a few seconds to come up with something to ask. Oh, you hate realtors and you're never going to use a realtor ever. That's fantastic. So let's say hell froze over. What would you do? You know, you can come up with all kinds of stuff and make a joke out of it. You know, the harder people are and the harsher people are, flip it around to a joke. And oh, you hate salesmen's guts. I don't blame you. So you know what happened back in the day? There's a lot of questions, and the more you get them talking, the more you're building rapport, and you've got that sale, right? So never be trumped. He said on there 3 times. Try to keep everybody. What was that? 3 objections? Was that his goal? What did he say? Ask for the appointment at least 3 times. Okay, what's another way of saying that? When they say no the first 2, don't give up.
You think you'll be ready next week? You think you'll be ready next month?
Yes,
Exactly. It's an affirmative thing.
yeah, and plan it down the line. There's a logical progression you're going to find most of the time, okay? Most of the time we're just looking, or we're not serious, we're just wondering about the value of our home. Oh, that's great, so you own your home now? Okay. We're just, the neighbor's house sold up the road. We were just wondering how much it was. Oh, that's fantastic. So were you hoping they were going to get a certain amount? Are you considering selling yourself? You know, there's a lot of questions that we can't be afraid to ask, but they start off almost always sounding like a no. Okay? And that's where I challenged all of our expired and FSBO people, keep them on the phone for 5. Their checklist for calls has the call, and then it has 5 check boxes for them to say 1 objection, 2 objections, 3 objections, 4 objections, and then what happens at the end of that call. And I guarantee if you stick for the minimum of 3, but if you could hold on for at least 5, you will convert 10 times as many sales. Most people give up within the first or maybe second try, but less than 20% of anything happens at that point in time. You've got to show your value and why. The more questions they ask, why are they asking questions? If they weren't interested, would they ask you any questions? If they had nothing at all, would they even bother telling you, well, you know, not really, you know, we need that more amount, well, we got to do this. Would they have even acknowledged that? No. They'd be like, no, get out of my house. We're not going to do anything. Leave. And you'd be getting that. Not, well, you know, we really, this 3% commission, this is a little high. That sounds like a no, but that's them saying, how do we make this work? Okay, and we got to have that mentality, optimism, that we can make the sale, that we are providing value, we are doing what's in their best interest. Does that make sense? Okay. This is when our art form and our craft comes into play. Anybody can walk a person into a home and have them fall in love with it. Anybody can list a home at a great value and sell it, okay? But it's convincing the sellers to do what's right. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, your home is beautiful, but it's not $280,000. You know, this home had a pool and a 3-car garage. Your home's only worth $265,000. But we're going to get you every dollar of that $265,000, because if you don't sell your home, you're not going to accomplish your goal. And if we overprice it, you're not going to move. And if we underprice it, you're going to leave some money on the table, perhaps. So, you know, convincing them to do what's in their best interest. Yeah, people will always think their house is the most expensive, nice house in the block, and then every buyer will never want to pay list price. Those are two objections you will always have to overcome. Get a buyer to come up and get a seller to go down. That's pretty much standard. So anyway, I was watching this last night and I thought this was great. It's a group of all kinds of sales, not businessmen, business owners, speakers, authors, talking about the best tips they have for sales. And a lot of them are not what you think they would be.
Sales. And for like an entrepreneur, not a salesperson, how about just an entrepreneur who's looking to start a business? Well, if you can't sell, if you can't influence, if you can't persuade, good luck trying to get your business off the ground. I'm not talking about just your customers, I'm talking about the bankers, the people who venture capitalists, your vendors, your credit card processor, the people who work for you. How do you get people to work for you excited? How do you get them excited? How do you get them to want to buy into your vision? At the highest level, what sales really is the transference of emotion. And the emotion you're transferring is this emotion of certainty. That someone feels certain, yeah, it's a good thing, it's going to help me, it's going to fill my need. When you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to start a business, and you're recruiting people, well, you're selling people on your vision for the future, your vision for this company. And if you can't do that, good luck trying to get great people to work for you. It's nearly impossible, which is why you always see, you know, the people, they say, oh, he's a visionary. Well, that's true, but typically not only are they visionaries, they also possess the ability to sell the vision to other people, to inspire them, to motivate them. So selling is not just like, you know, people think of selling, oh, well, I'm not a salesman. Everybody goes, well, yes, you do. You need to learn how to influence. How about trying to get your kids to make their bed, or do their homework, or believe in the value of education? How about trying to get a landlord to give you a reduction on your rent, or to extend the lease the way you want? How about trying to negotiate terms? You understand, it cuts to everything.
You need to be able to sell. Whether it's Kickstarter, whether it's New York Times, whether it's your local newspaper, you need to be able to communicate effectively and sell, which is why when entrepreneurs ask me for books to read outside of business books, I say, On Writing Well, Bird by Bird, all books on writing, improving communication. David Ogilvy on advertising, study print ads, where you have very little space. I think those are all very, very effective. The best entrepreneurs I've ever met are all good communicators. It's perhaps one of the very few unifying factors. They're exceptional communicators. Practice is the only way to get better at communicating. And practicing speaking does not provide you, generally, with something to review later, which is why the written word is so powerful. Writing is thought crystallized on a piece of paper that can then be reviewed. It's very difficult to do that with speech, which is why I recommend people focus on honing their skills in writing and take time to study good direct response ads. Take time to, for instance, maybe develop a swipe file. So one of the things that I did for years is anytime I bought something, I would identify the ad, the phone call, the print ad, the offer, whatever it was that made me decide to buy it. And I would either cut it out or record it, put it into Evernote, whatever it might be, and save it. So I had a record of everything that I bought and why I bought it. And then I could go back and review it, and I'd be like, oh, looks like I fell for this, this, and this. Not in a bad way. It looks like this tipped me from or not interested to, yeah, I'll spend $550, $500, $5,000 on that. I save all that. Everything that works in sales has been done already. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. So just keep track of the crap that you buy, or the awesome stuff that you buy, and decide, you know, what was the trigger, what pushed me over the edge, and then just sell to people like you. That's what I do. It's really easy. People are like, who's your market? I'm like, well, you know, I'm a 30-something asset-based, tech-savvy male, so why don't I just sell to those people? That makes it a lot easier than trying to guess.
Austin, I think you need to reverse engineer who you're selling to. So if I were you, Austin, I would spend all of January taking people out to lunch and dinner or a drink or getting them on the phone, but literally spending the entire month of January not selling to people and just listening to the people that you sell to figure out what their pain points are. I would walk in and be like, hey, D-Rock, you know I sell you computer stuff and things of that nature. What are your pain points? What's your problem? What's your struggles in your business? Like, let's cut the crap. Like, yes, I want to sell to you, but let's take a step back. I want to sell to you by providing you some sort of value. Maybe I have a friend. Maybe I will recommend that you watch the Ask Gary Vee show to make your business better. Maybe I don't do a lot of things, but what I'm doing is I'm providing you value, and our conversation and our relationship is not just predicated on me selling. You know, it's kind of like I was talking to one of my friends. He's like, I want to have better relationships with girls. I'm like, cool. Why don't you make it something about other than sex? Like, if your whole relationship is like, I want to hang out with you every time to just hook up, there's probably a good chance that person doesn't think that you're providing them much value outside of that execution, which is a fine execution. Everybody needs it. I get it, blah, blah, blah. Same way I think about sales. If you're just selling every single time, that is what your foundational relationship is based on. And you become spam and sales all the time. Why don't you spend all of January not selling ever once and opening your ears and listening and trying to help even outside of the context of you? Even outside the context of you. Meaning, how can you help them besides just their business? Maybe you'll get to know D-Rock and find out that his aunt is a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, and you just get a Dallas Cowboys hat. And say, hey, you go to eBay and buy, you know, a Tony Dorsett opened starting lineup for 49 cents, $3 shipping, but you send and say, hey, give this to your aunt. It's not what you spent, it was the thought. That stuff matters.
Top salespeople commit themselves to lifelong learning. This, by the way, changed my life so dramatically when I was 24. Almost like I tripped over something and picked myself up, and it was a great treasure. And the treasure was that your mind is your most precious asset. And the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your sales career. If you commit yourself to lifelong learning, you will achieve such extraordinary success. And I cannot emphasize this too often. Read, listen to audio programs, attend seminars, and never forget that the most valuable asset you will ever have is your mind. As you continue to learn, you'll eventually become one of the most valuable salespeople in your company. The more knowledge you acquire that can be applied to practical purposes, the greater will be your rewards and the more you will be paid.
To see the clouds. This is about rainmaking, about sales. These are the things I learned about sales. First thing is, let 100 flowers blossom. This I stole from Chairman Mao, although it's not clear to me he implemented letting 100 flowers blossom. 100 flowers blossoms mean that at the start of a company, you'll often see people who are not your intended customers using your product or service, and they're going to be using it in ways you didn't anticipate. Many entrepreneurs go crazy. My God, the wrong people are buying our products in large quantities. What are we doing wrong? Let's get marketing and sales in here. We need to reposition the product because we know who should buy our product. Well, that's categorically stupid. Fundamentally, when you see this happening, first of all, take the money. Take the money. There's two theories in engineering for revising a product. One is you go to the people who aren't buying your product and you ask them, why aren't you buying our Macintosh, Mr. Fortune 500 CIO? And the CIO will say, you don't have a letter quality printer driver. You don't have Lotus 1, 2, 3. You come back to the lab, you convince Lotus to do it. You get a letter quality printer driver. You go back to the Fortune 500 CIO. You say, all right, we listened. Now there's a printer driver. Now there's 1, 2, 3. They still won't buy it. They still won't buy it. The other theory in engineering is you go to the people who are buying your product, Mr. Desktop Publishing or Ms. Desktop Publishing. Why are you buying our product? Because it's WYSIWYG, because it's high resolution printing. So you come back to the labs and you say, well, people are buying our product to use it for desktop publishing, not spreadsheet, database, and word processing like we intended. And what do they need for desktop publishing system? They need bigger monitors. They need higher resolution printers. They need higher resolution monitors. They need all these things to make desktop publishing better. That's my theory. Fix for who's buying. Ignore the people who are atheists. Atheists are too hard to convert to your religion. Go for agnostics and go for believers. Forget the atheists. Second point is, you need to enable people to test drive your product. That you're saying to them, I think you're smart, and because I think you're smart, I'm not going to bludgeon you into becoming my customer. Take home my product, take home my service, try my software, try my website, then you decide. The third point is to suck down. one of the fundamental shortcomings of sales training is that you think, or many people think, that selling a new product is about sucking up. You need to suck up to CXO level people, suck up to a CIO, suck up to a CTO, suck up to a CEO, a CMO, sucking up to CXO level people. It has been my experience that particularly from a tech startup, the people who truly make the decision to try a product or service are not the people with CXO, vice president, or director level title. They are the people who are administrative aides and database administrators and tech support people. They're the interns, they're the summer hires. They're people without titles. They're the people who really do the work, however. And so if you want to be successful in sales, you have to understand something, that in most organizations, the higher you go, the thinner the oxygen, and therefore the more difficult it is to find intelligent life, right? So, if you dedicate yourself in a sales effort to sucking up, you'll be sucking up to the dumbest people in the organization. You need to learn to suck down, and you need to learn to suck across, because that's where the decisions are made for a high-tech startup. Suck down, suck across, don't just suck up.
And this is the one where everyone goes, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson, right? One of the things that we do in our business is we take experts and we teach them how to package their information up into products like ebooks and other information products and sell them. Well, when I start talking to these experts, almost universally, they say things like, I've got all the content, I just need to find someone who can market and sell it for me. And when I say to them, well, you know what would probably be good for you is to actually learn some marketing and sales, they go, oh, I don't want to learn. I'm not a salesman. They kind of like look down at salespeople like it's some like lower form of human business scum or something like that. And you know, you imagine, oh, okay, I have to put on a funky, like a weird suit and like a windbreaker, like a car salesman in order to sell my product. I would never want to do that. Well, when you really learn sales, as I know you know, because you're a fantastic salesperson, that the best selling methods are consultative selling, where you don't sit down and try to talk someone into buying. You sit down and you say, let me ask you some questions. Let me learn about you and find out what all your problems are, and let me see if what I have is even a fit. And then, once you've found out where they're at, what their problems are, what all the challenges they're facing are, and what they'd like to accomplish, then you sell solutions. You sell them fixing their problems. You sell them getting what they want, not your thing. And the best of the best of the best salespeople are the ones that walk in and sit down and ask a bunch of questions and then say, my product can't help you, let me refer you to someone who can, because those are the people that win the trust, and that when they say, this is the thing that will solve your problem, the prospect says, that's the thing I need, because they're trustworthy. So learning consultative selling and really learning how to sell like a professional is very important.
Do not try to sell something that you wouldn't buy yourself.
That's
okay?
right.
So if you don't truly think it's something that you would yourself be a customer of, don't try to pitch it. You know, don't be a used car salesman. So please make sure that whatever you're trying to come up with is compelling enough that you would yourself be deeply interested in buying that product.
I spent 17 years getting a formal education. Competition's good. Competition's healthy. For who? Imagine if you were the only marketing company in the world. Is that better than having millions of marketing companies? Exactly. I want to own the sector. I want to own the sector. I want somebody, when somebody thinks about sales training, I want them to equate Grant Cardone. And whatever I have to spend to get there, I'll spend to get there. I want to own the sector completely. I don't want to compete in it. So one way you could own a sector is by tweeting, okay? If you're not tweeting or Facebooking or YouTubing, okay, or using LinkedIn, if you aren't using these free mediums to communicate to the world, you're not in the game, man. You're not in the game, okay? Now this morning, if you look at my Twitter account today, because this is more than just about selling and closing a transaction. If I don't have anybody to pay attention to me, I can't sell or close. Would you agree? Look, there's nobody here, man. Hey, man, I'm a good salesman. I can shut you down right now. Who am I talking to? Myself? I need people. Obscurity is the biggest problem your business has. There is no bigger problem than obscurity. It's not money, it's not financing, it's not price, it's not value, it's not package. It is one thing, obscurity. All those media programs that you saw me on this morning, they all tell you that there's not enough money, the banks aren't loaning, consumers don't have confidence, people aren't healthy, the economy's in trouble. Dude, none of those are the problem. The problem is nobody knows you. I don't know you, man. I don't know you. Who are you? Right? Price doesn't matter at this point. Value doesn't matter at this point. The package, the offer, the problems. I don't know you. If you don't know me, you can't buy my books. Obscurity is a bigger problem than money, okay? So I'll go broke just trying to get out of obscurity, and I'm going to use these free mediums to do so.
They did a study at Harvard of the different levels of sales techniques that were the most in top sales guys in the world and women used versus those that were average. They went through several steps about getting rapport, about understanding the client's needs, about being able to demonstrate the features and benefits of the product and going through overcoming objections and then closing the sale. And they looked at it, and what was surprising was that the people who were the absolute cream of the cream, the top 1% of the top 1% of salespeople on the planet, did exactly the same steps as those who were average. The difference was that those that were exceptional focused on the first part, which is being able to build rapport, being able to understand the client's needs. In other words, there was a sincere level of appreciation for what the client wanted. The intention that was set, the congruency that was set was, how can I serve you? How can I understand you? Not